Despite having quite high ratings, it was cancelled by CBS at the end of season 4, but NBC later gave it fresh life and a new home. Although the opportunity to spend more time with these characters will be welcomed by fans of the new series, it is difficult to imagine it attracting any additional viewers. There is nothing truly fresh that the series seems interested in exploring, despite all the attempts it makes to modernize the subject with mediocre gags about contemporary technology like FaceTime or Instagram. Magnum PI still struggles to justify its existence in the age of nostalgia-based entertainment, where such reboots are inevitable. The first scene of Magnum PI Season 5 Episode 1 shows Thomas Magnum earning a living as a private eye when he makes a crucial error. He developed feelings for his partner Juliet Higgins. She had previously worked with MI6. She was a famous badass, and Magnum fell in love with her right away. Something that, at first, he was reluctant to admit. Because he didn't want to jeopardize their friendship, he had decided against going there. She had also not desired that. Up to the moment where it was hard to ignore their love for one another, they did their best to protect their business. They eventually gave in to those emotions. They finally made it after 4 seasons, and the difficult part is now ahead. Now, in addition to trying to make the business work, they also have to make their relationship work. It was going to be challenging given the difficulties the partnership had previously encountered. Because Juliet and Magnum were so dissimilar, it happened organically. They had a wide range of disagreements. Even the decision to tell their friends they were now together was contentious. After their first night together, Magnum had a lot he wanted to tell the world. In the meantime, Juliet advised caution. They shouldn't risk informing people until they were certain of the direction they were going in, since they are unsure of how the connection will develop. Also, they must collaborate. Working together was challenging enough without the addition of feelings for them, because they theoretically already lived together because they both resided on the property of their close friend Robin, albeit in separate wings. In the end, Magnum and Juliet resolved to keep their relationship private. Instead, he began to deceive his friends. And that was directly at odds with his character. Magnum suggested Juliet was in the cellar when Kumu demanded to know where she was because she hadn't slept in her bed. He claimed she had begun a brand new exercise program called Wine and Rise. When Kumu concocted that absurd falsehood, he undoubtedly sensed that something was off. She nevertheless disappeared for long enough for Juliet to emerge from concealment. Magnum sought to get Juliet to confess the truth because he had disliked lying to his companion. She felt strongly that her approach was superior, thus she wouldn't accept it. Again, Juliet succeeded in selling him on her plan. Only after then was it a little unsteady. Working together once more was the only thing that appeared to help them. Another case was discovered. Sarah Macy walked up to them. Sarah's husband had just passed away. Greg got involved in an automobile crash. He passed away instantly. When Sarah received a citation in the mail because her husband had run a red light just before he passed away, she was trying her best to pick up the pieces. Sarah noticed that her husband wasn't the only one in the car that night in the picture of him racing a red light. On the night Greg died, they were together. Sarah didn't know who this lady was. Her husband hadn't informed her that he was dropping someone off, and she didn't recognize her from the picture. Sarah therefore assumed the worst. She thought her husband was cheating on her. She believed that the woman was his love interest and that, if the incident hadn't been captured on the traffic camera, Greg would have tried to cover it up. Sarah sought solutions. She asked Magnum and Juliet for assistance in finding those solutions, and they started investigating into Greg. They quickly learned that Greg had been privately contacting a woman going by the name of Jay. Jay informed Greg that they would have to cut their conversation short because her husband would shortly be returning home. Magnum and Juliet were now starting to suspect that Greg may have been killed by his affair partner's husband when they were discovered searching Greg's office. Detective Childs noticed them. Childs, the detective, was new. After Gordo was sacked for breaking someone out of jail, he had taken over Gordo's previous position. The new guy was rough, too. Childs showed no interest in trying to assist a couple of private investigators or in finding the truth. He instructed the 2 private investigators to stay out of his path and forbade them from using a fake badge. They decided to disregard him. Magnum also gained access to the traffic camera that evening using Childs' badge number. They discovered proof that Greg had been run off the road by another vehicle. A press-on nail was also discovered inside the automobile. The nail was beautifully embellished. In order to get his nails done professionally, Magnum got in touch with his ex-girlfriend Kaimi. It appeared to be her work. Magnum was speaking to his ex, but he kept Kaimi on speaker the entire time, which made Juliet a little envious. She revealed to Magnum who the nail belonged to. It was Melinda Parker's property. Nathan Parker, a well-known figure on the island, was her husband. He had money. He has a very strong security detail. He also had a history of abusing his wives. Melinda never had a relationship with Greg. Greg had treated her for several months before realizing that she was being abused by her husband. And he endeavored to assist. Greg was attempting to elude her. On Greg's computer, Magnum and Juliet discovered pictures of her bruises. They even visited Melinda's home to inquire about her well-being. Since the accident, she has avoided using her cell phone. Thankfully, they were mistaken about their fear that she had been murdered by her husband. Melinda was visible and alive. They also observed that she was being mistreated, and they were able to piece the reality together in the end. They afterwards attempted to visit Detective Childs. Without Melinda's complaint, Childs lacked any legal justification for taking any action. He then used Juliet and Magnum as bait to get them to act. He was aware that they would go and save Melinda. It is precisely what took place. When they most needed Childs, he arrived with a full squad and helped them get her away from Parker. In the end, Childs wasn't all that horrible. Even though he was strong. In time, Magnum and Juliet grew to like him. And they were able to meet Sarah and introduce Melinda afterwards. Melinda informed Sarah of Greg's life-saving actions, and Sarah learned that her husband was a decent person. Magnum's former however, was AWOL. It turns out that Captain Green was being kept against his will by persons who wanted the names of his black operations team because he hasn't received any of his recent pension checks. In episode 2, Magnum informs Higgins that Rick needs a place to crash after preparing her a delicious breakfast. Rick arrives at that precise moment with all of his things. Higgins chuckles. Together with his friend, TC also approaches Higgins in a flirtatious manner. She is compelled to say she is single, but refuses to go on a date with TC's friend Jin. A man whose sister recently passed away from an overdose is the person Higgins and Magnum encounter. The Mean is curious about his sister Karina's death. He wants an answer. Higgins and Magnum go to the precinct and politely request that they look into Karina's situation. They are surprisingly given access. They discuss how to keep their religion a secret from Rick while living in the same home as them while they review documents. Also, they find evidence that Karina may have been murdered. On a storage facility, TC and Jin made an offer. Jin becomes enraged and offers $4K. He is told to stop by TC. Higgins and Magnum converse with Gordon in Rick's pub. They explain their situation to him. They must pose as lifeguards to go undercover. Gordon concurs. They arrive at the beach, where Karina was discovered dead at the lifeguard station, hours later. They use fictitious names. Jin's knowledge that the storage unit they purchased was stocked with gold is revealed to TC. He received a tip. Jin is informed by TC that they are returning a Purple Heart to its proper owner. On the beach, Magnum converses with the locals. Karina had several adversaries, as C learns. He is asked to apply sunscreen to a brunette. Higgins comes across them. Magnum informs her that it's not what she believes. Not being envious, Higgins. Magnum is compelled to save a crying youngster from the waves as they discuss what they have learned.